In these calm green waters off the coast of Finland, a new type of warfare is emerging.
This is Estonian warship Papa 6732.
MiG.
Follow my instructions.
MiG.
Alter your course to 105 immediately. Over.
Vladimir Putin has turned the Baltic Sea into a battleground of grey zone attacks, targeting the undersea pipelines and data cables that supply most of northern Europe. At a military base just outside Helsinki, NATO say they're developing a radical new approach, and this is its face. It's a Metal Shark naval drone, and it's part of a new fleet of experimental unmanned vehicles being trialled by NATO's Task Force X, with a view to repelling Putin's attacks.
We have 5 units like this in the water. You will not see them because they are underwater, so there was no point. And they are performing an acoustic barrier to prevent any ships to enter inside the barrier. And if anyone enter, we are supposed to raise an alarm and tell the control center that the ship is inside the barrier.
Times Radio has been given access to NATO's one-of-a-kind research vessel, NRV Alliance, for a demonstration of a range of experimental unmanned and autonomous vehicles.
This is the Metal Shark ACT-funded asset. They have a UAV on board. So it's tethered UAV on board, and once the UAV is up in the air, it could be up to 50 meters or 60 meters. This provides really different range. Why? Because we have the UAV quite high, and then the horizon is different. And with the proper camera, what they have, they can see and identify a vessel from probably 10-12 miles distance in a good weather conditions. Obviously, it has also radar on board, it has camera on board, and it has ISR capabilities as well, the USV, but providing that the radar and the is low, you can expect that the range is very low, especially in poor weather conditions. So we can come up with up to maximum 2-3 miles range if the weather is bad. So that's why the main purpose of this is to be interceptor. And you can imagine, I can just provide you a scenario, potential scenario that can be used operationally. If we have a suspicious vessel identified by the ISR asset, that we believe that this is what we are looking for, and she was identified 10 miles away, and we believe that this ship, for example, we are in Baltic, CUI intruder, potentially it could have cut the cable, or it's about to cut the cable, or because it's dragging an anchor, then you can send this asset quickly, 14 knots, to go to this ship, to check and to report back, to send us video. Does it have an anchor? Is the anchor up or it's not? Maybe the anchor is dragging. As I mentioned, there is a UUV underneath at the moment. Underwater unmanned vehicle. The asset can detect this sound coming from an anchor being dragged. So as prevention, we can send, before coming to the cable, we can send such asset to go and quickly say, Captain, sorry, I know that you don't know that your anchor is down, but I'm here and I'm telling you your anchor is, so please lift up your anchor straight away. So if it's not compliance, or if we see that the ship is without the anchor, then we can send our frigate to intercept properly the ship and board it. But if it's not suspicious, probably it's not worth sending a frigate there. This is the value, operational value of those assets, how they can be used really for our purposes. What we've seen in Ukraine, as you know, to control those drones, you need a network. Independently from GPS or satellite, so you can create mesh network with those radio network, and this drone up in the air can be used to relay and to extend the range of the drones that are active. What you see at our starboard side is the French Navy sponsored asset for this event. This is the French Navy contribution and it's Exile Drix. So it's a USV, no matter it looks like a submarine, but it's an unmanned surface vehicle, and the main role is to provide MSA. It's pretty capable assets, I would say, because it has both surface surveillance capability, but also subsurface as well. The speed it's about 9-10 knots to 12, but again, as higher the speed is, as less endurance.
Yeah.
So what you can use it for is to patrol a specific area and to provide you MSA. So the capabilities on board, so the asset has AIS receiver, which means that can transmit AIS data as well for us, because sometimes the AIS you have ashore has not the reach to catch the AIS from the ships. So this first identify the vessel by, or I would say detect the AIS transmission and push it as a track back to us. But if we have some doubt, and I can assure you that in many cases the AIS is spoofed, which means that a military vessel is submitting herself as a merchant vessel. So with these capabilities, it has a camera on board. You can ask for identification. So just provide me a picture of the ship, get closer to the ship and give me a picture. And suddenly we figure out that in fact it's not a merchant ship as transmitted via AIS, but it's a military ship. So it's not, this one is not fully autonomous. All of them can be fully autonomous, and yes, controlled by people. It means that someone is providing waypoints. It's not with a joystick. At the same time, again, if you want to be fully autonomous, you can pre-program it to follow a specific pattern and to patrol in this specific area. But if you want to send him, so this is fully autonomous, but if you want to send the ship somewhere, you just put the waypoint and it's following and going by itself.
It's not just these systems being worked on. The Alliance has a host of experimental sensors and underwater drones that it operates from a top-secret control room within the ship, run in cooperation with NATO's Centre for Maritime Research and Experimentation. We're not allowed to film in there, partly because the data is already being fed back to active NATO missions.
What brings us here to the Task Force X initiative is we are bringing some of these technologies we develop and we research at in our institution, bringing it to the rapid adoption framework of ACT under Task Force X. So we are developing standards for interoperability. So you've seen a lot of different systems. One of the things that NATO needs to do is make sure that we create the conditions for systems from different vendors, different nations, to work together in one mission. So that's part of the work we do. Other part is testing and researching new techniques for sensing threats in the water. Some of the things we do here also with our colleagues on board the ship is developing new algorithms for detecting things like anchor drops, which are known to be a cause of some acts of sabotage in the Baltic, namely. And so we are very actively supporting Task Force X with edge technology, quantum sensing. We have some of that also being tested during these weeks here in the Baltic. We are bringing this kind of technology on the edge of disruption, if you will, together with the interoperability piece to support the Task Force X initiative.
The Project X team is keen to impress upon us that what's key is getting NATO states to start using this technology as fast as possible.
That technology is growing exponentially every day, and also some competitors are in the middle of conflicts, that those cataclysms that they are suffering are moving forward really fast, new capabilities, the implementation of technology. So we need to keep a close eye on those efforts, because we are losing a operational advantage. We need to make sure our force protection is good enough.
And you talk about those places where there are conflicts. I mean, a lot of our audience will be thinking of Russia and Ukraine. I assume that has had some sort of an impact on how you do things here.
Correct. That's one of the good examples. We learn from any scenario in the world, and that's one of the main ones, because things are going fast and technology is being just implemented every single day in a different way. So we need to learn how to employ them, how to defend against those, just to maintain that desired operational advantage.
And I've noted as well that while this is largely based around the defence industry, it's not just defence industries or defence companies you're reaching out to try and find things like this.
Yes, this is a multi-domain effort. All the actors in the battlefield are, really important. So it's not the military, it's industry, it's the people. All the instruments of power are of course connected. So the multi-domain approach is really critical. Logistics, everything.
Back in Helsinki, we're taken into the basement of a Finnish government building, where senior members of Project X explain more about the ambitious plans to get these tools into the hands of NATO member states.
Yep. So the Rapid Adoption Action Plan, right, which is a summit deliverable, if you like, starts to set the scene here to say that we need to do more quickly. We have acquisition processes in nations generally focus on delivering exquisite capability, if I put it like that. So we will spend a number of years thinking about our requirement. We'll get those agreed. We'll push the requirement out to industry. And because it's very specific, it may require adaptation of a product. I'm making up these numbers just to illustrate the point. But if we were to say today that we want to solve the Baltic Sea operational picture for CUI, we could contract something. We could be buying more frigates or something in maybe 5 years, right? They would need to go through the requirements process. We need to buy things. Instead of doing that through the nations, what we're going to do is leverage the agreed defense planning requirements. So all allies have agreed that these things are what they want to do. So we already have an agreed requirement, so we can save some time there. And then look at potentially, so you have to think about this, when we make large decisions to acquire a frigate or a new fleet of aircraft, we are locking our taxpayers into owning those assets for a long time. Okay, so the amount of time you want to spend making that decision is commensurate with the commitment, right? It's like buying a puppy at Christmas. You are making a long-term commitment to that. You have long-term costs. Here, what we're saying is we can acquire these almost as consumables. These assets, if I look at what some nations have been doing, will be owned and operated for a year or two. If we have them contractually owned and contractually operated, we have them as a service. We are not looking at refreshing their technology. We are paying a service. We're paying a service to receive information, data, ISR feeds, telemetry, and the like. That's what we'll do. So our expectation is, because we are not creating that downstream commitment for personnel costs, for ownership, for operations and maintenance, as we call it, that there's actually the opportunity to agree some expenditure quickly, because we already know that will be limited in how long we'll commit that. Yeah, we'll basically have a finite amount of time that money will be committed for. To the extent that at least one of the allies was saying that they thought they might be able to do something this year, because we're potentially going to do it as a service. So that's at least the vision. Now, the reality of that is, if we start with the 8 Baltic Sea nations, plus the other 4 nations that I know want to play, I'm expecting that if we get half of those to have something by June next year, we'd be doing very well. I think we'll all be underway with all of them. But as you quite rightly point out, there are a set of acquisition processes that build up through this, it will seem incredible to some, period of austerity, I think, for the military, right, where their defense budgets have been seen in their minds to have been lower than they were, say, in the Cold War days. So those processes now seek to wring the maximum benefit out of those and create, the next new frigate, the next new aircraft. This isn't about that. Task Force X is about delivering capability rapidly. Task Force X, and then Task Force Baltic specifically for our Baltic allies. So we are essentially going to help in what we think of in the next phase of this Task Force X Baltic, to help allies either buy those assets, to build those assets, or to borrow those. And the third B is somewhat contrived, but that's to rent, lease, or even acquire those assets as a service. So there are providers in alliance industry right now that will provide a ISR service, an intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance service for us if we ask that. So those capabilities exist in industry. we don't necessarily need to own and operate these things. So the conventional model in NATO, what we call is NATO-owned, NATO-operated, right? The no-no model. But we can have a contractor-owned and contractor-operated model, a COCO model, for certain mission sets. So, for example, surveillance of critical undersea infrastructure is something that might fit in a kind of COCO model. But you can imagine certain, like kinetic delivery of effects would be something that we would prefer to remain like as a NATO-owned, NATO-operated model. So that for the next phase, that's exactly what we'll do. Help those allies understand what they can acquire and when. Right now, I'm working with I will call them 8 Baltic Sea nations. They don't collectively refer to themselves as that. I'm also working with the Belgians, the Netherlands, France, and Norway. And we hope, or at least our target is to have acquired these capabilities before June next year. That's our plan. So we'll work on that with those allies. There are other allies waiting in the wings. Allies affiliated with the Eastern Mediterranean, so Turkey, Romania, Bulgaria have an interest in the Black Sea. The UK was an interest in Atlantic as well, who are interested in this. So what we hope to do essentially is show that we can be successful quickly, and then having done that, we can scale that effort. We can go from 8 or 12 allies to maybe 32, but always letting those allies make their own procurement decisions, so rather than imposing a solution on them.
All of this research will be shown to NATO members at the Hague summit, where Task Force X hopes it can be used to check the threat Russia poses in the Baltic and beyond.